Hey guys, and welcome to Anchor to Truth. Today we are diving into chapter 24 in the book of Jubilees. So let's get started.
All right, let's do it, guys. Verse 1 of 24. And it came to pass after the death of Abraham that Yahuwah blessed Isaac his son, and he arose from Hebron and went and dwelt at the well of the vision in the first year of the third week of this Jubilee, 7 years. Then in the first year of the fourth week, a famine began in the land, besides the first famine which had been in the days of Abraham. And Jacob sawed lentil pottage, and Esau came from the field hungry, and he said to Jacob his brother, Give me of this red pottage. And Jacob said to him, Sell to me thy birthright, and I will give thee bread and also some of this lentil pottage. And Esau said in his heart, I shall die. Of what profit to me is this birthright? And he said to Jacob, I give it to thee. And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he sware unto him. And Jacob gave his brother Esau bread and pottage, and he ate till he was satisfied. And Esau despised his birthright. For this reason was Esau's name called Edom, on account of the red pottage which Jacob gave him for his birthright. And Jacob became the elder, and Esau was brought down from his dignity.
Okay, so before we get into the good stuff, I know y'all want to talk about this part about him selling his birthright. That's going to be a big one there. But let's address this right off the bat. The well of the vision. So, well of the vision, if you look over here on the left-hand side, it says Bier Lahai Roy, which means the well of the living one that seeth. And if you look back at Genesis chapter 25, verse 11, which is also kind of pointed out right up here, it breaks down the same information there. So it says where he dwelt at Bier Lahai Roy, which is a geographical location. The translation of that geographical location is well of the vision, or also translated as the well of the living one that seeth me. So that's what that's referring to. It's not specifically referring to a specific well that's there, although there probably is a well or many wells there. But yeah, anyway, so that's the translation of the geographical location. So I thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, Colin, one more thing that right above that, actually, when we see where it says, right in the first one, it says, and it came to pass after the death of Abraham that Yahuwah blessed Isaac his son. And I thought that was interesting because this is normally you see Abraham giving the blessings, or the people just bestowing the blessings upon each other, but here it says Yahuwah blessed Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, because the whole last couple of chapters we were reading was Abraham and Jacob having these conversations, the grandson. But now, we kept asking ourselves, well, where's Isaac? What happened to Isaac? And it's almost as though like Abraham's job was to take care of and set up Jacob. But the father, God, was like, no, I still am going to make sure Isaac gets squared away, and I'm going to go in there and intervene on any and everybody's behalf and make sure that Isaac isn't left out, that Isaac's not going to be a part of this lineage, because we still call it the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Isaac isn't, dropped out of the story. So I thought it was interesting to see this marker here where it's like, nope, Isaac wasn't forgotten. He didn't mess up so bad that he left the blessing. It's just, it happened in a different way.
Awesome. Great catch there, man. All right. And also down here below, we can kind of start jumping into this part that I know everybody's wanting to get into, the selling of the birthright. Now, Joe, I know you already kind of have a theory or an idea about this selling of the birthright as far as how that conversation went. You want to share that with us real quick?
Well, from reading the account in Genesis, it almost comes across almost like two brothers just having a conversation where it was like he comes in off the field and he's like, hey, I'm hungry. And he says, well, sell me your birthright. It's almost like it's not a serious conversation when you're reading it out of the Genesis account. I almost feel like it's two brothers just, hey, okay, I'll save my birthright. Here you go. Give me something to eat before I famish. It's almost like over dramatization there. It's like, I'm going to famish if I don't have this lentil soup.
Kind of in jest.
Right. And so, but then when we're reading this account, it changes my mind a little bit, only because when we go back into verse 2, we see that there is a famine that's taking place.
Exactly.
And so with the additional information, changes my last stance on what I previously thought about this. So, yeah, so there's a famine that's come up. So that's telling me that him being hungry, Esau being hungry, might be a legitimate hey, I'm hungry, bro. Like, there's a famine in the land. And I went out, and it says in verse 3, it says, and Esau came from the field hungry, which tells me there's a famine, which usually leads to there's not a lot of livestock, there's not a lot of animal. He was a hunter. So it's telling me he went out and didn't catch anything to eat that day.
Mm-hmm.
So he's literally coming back home and going, you know what? I'm hungry, man. Like with this famine going on, all the animals are dying, or they're all being eaten up, or whatever it might be. There's not a lot of water for them. And so he's coming out of the field, and he's like, I had a very unsuccessful day of hunting, and I'm hungry. So my stance on that has changed in lieu of this additional information here. This changes where I previously saw that.
Yeah, I definitely think in the in the canon, I do think it kind of leaves room for speculation, especially if you look in the Masoretic. Everything in the Masoretic leans towards making people that maybe aren't so bad out to be really, really bad. You know, I don't know. Just we'll leave it at that for now. But yeah, it definitely it leaves room for speculation, and I think this actually does kind of clear that up. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
So yes, there was a famine in the land, and then also down here it says Esau said in his heart, "I shall die. Of what profit is it to me? Is this birthright?" So if he's saying that in his heart, and again, this is information that's being revealed to Moses as Moses writes this down, revealed to him by the angel of the presence, right? Or angelic beings. So this is being revealed to Moses as he's writing this down. So this is information, right? That they're able to know. This isn't Jacob writing down what his brother felt in his heart, right? This isn't an opinion. This is coming from the most high of what Esau had in his heart. Yeah, so for all of you that say, oh, well, God knows my heart, the good thing about God is he knows our heart. The bad news about it is he knows our heart, right? So so make sure your heart's right.
Oh yeah. No, and I think I'm in line with you guys on this one. That jumped off the page for me is the famine. And as we're kind of looking through more of that story, like Kyle brought up there, he says that he said in his heart, I shall die. So whenever it says he came out of the field hungry, he wasn't just regular like, oh, I haven't eaten lunch today. He was hungry, and this might be the end of my life hungry. So it brings a little bit of humanity to his decision. And I'm not saying it was the right one. Of course, he goes down in infamy because of it. But you're like, well, what's the point of having a birthright if I'm dead? And you can kind of see how that logic plays out a little bit in your mind. It's like, okay, if I don't eat, then I'm going to be dead, and if I die, I get no birthright anyway because, well, I'm dead. So what do I do to kind of mitigate this situation? How do I get through this? What we also see is, like Joe brought up, he's out hunting, he's normally bringing in the bacon per se, and yet here he's like, I just want your lentil soup. That's a very cheap, poor, regular, generic kind of meal. This isn't anything fancy or over the top. Lentils are just essentially beans and broth. That's really what a good lentil soup is. And for him to kind of say, even like the lowly meal, like I will give up my birthright just to have some sustenance. And that's kind of the more that I was reading it this time, especially because of those details that are brought into the story here.
It reminds me also of some of the end times prophetic things, right? The things that people will be doing in those last days, right? Just for something to eat. What kind of decisions are they going to make, and what really are people going to compromise on to be able to have just something to eat, right?
Well,
Will they compromise their faith? Will they take the mark? Will they, all this other stuff, right? So,
well, apparently, according to Revelation, that's what exactly is going to happen. People are going to say, you know what? When met with a dilemma, and I'm not saying, look, I would say this, that I hope to God that when we get to that point, if we live long enough to see that we make the right decisions. But I can't stand here in judgment of anybody who's starving or they're in a bad situation, and then saying, hey, if you'll just do this, then you'll be able to buy, sell, and trade and live life and go back to normalcy. Where do we hear that before? Not too many years ago. So it's a scary thing because people go, oh, it's no big deal. It's just, you're just doing this so you can still survive, and then you're realizing that you just sold your soul. You know,
Yeah.
you
It's
just
why
went
we
into a
have to be,
covenant.
yeah, we have to be established now so that when
Yes,
that time comes, there is no compromise. There is no justification. We have to have that matter settled ahead of time.
exactly.
But yeah, that's what it makes me think about when I read this.
Mm.
So yeah, he is really hungry. I wonder how
Mhm.
long he's been, without food that he's making such a a ridiculous agreement here. I mean, he thinks he's going to die, so he wants he needs some of this soup or whatever just to get by another day. I believe in Genesis it says he despised his birthright, does it not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I shall die. Of what profit to me is this birthright? So his birthright was not as important as that bowl of soup.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it ever gets discussed, but actually, I don't think I've ever heard anybody discuss this part, guys. But what does it say of Jacob, though, if his brother, of course, even with the added information, we're still speculating this conversation if he truly was starving or if he was whatever. But what about Jacob, instead of being a loving brother, going, hey, man, you're starving, here's some lentil soup, eat up. But
Right.
it's almost like, it's like you're taking advantage of the situation almost, where it's like, oh, okay, well, and, give me your birthright, I'll give you something to eat. I have three brothers, and I don't feel like in my heart I would ever want to do that to them. If my brothers came to me and they were hungry, hey man, eat up whatever I got. Let's do it. You
Mm.
know,
Yeah, give me
but
the house Dad gave you, and I'll give you some food.
right,
You know.
yeah. So it's just one of those things, and then of course the reason why we have to speculate here is because we don't have a lot of the backstory of them growing up. We don't have a backstory of their other conversations. We know that the Esau's heart was as far away from God, it seems like, as you're going to get, because the father seems not to have a lot of love for Esau either because of the way he is. His parents are very disappointed in Esau because of the decisions he makes later and who he marries and what he's doing. And so there's a lot here to speculate over. But at the same time, I'm wondering, like, what was Jacob's angle? What was his thing here to say, instead of saying, you know what, brother, let me just give this to you, to take the birthright?
Well, honestly, I think you just brought up the biggest point there, Joe. And I think that is there's a lot more to that birthright than just, hey, you get dad's tent and his goats. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
more than, hey, you're the head of the family now. This birthright, this is the handing down, if you will, of the priesthood, right? And this was
Mm-hmm.
something that Jacob did want to partake in. He did want to tend to those things, and Esau was not. So let's think of the situation that would have happened if this didn't happen, if this didn't occur, and Esau was the one in charge of the priestly
Mm-hmm.
duties. Would any of the duties
Well,
happen? First of all,
probably not.
and secondly, if they were done, would they be done correctly? I mean, probably some
Yeah.
pretty strange fire going on. Like, to be honest with you, I mean, it would have ended up being Jacob's anyway, because the first time he offered strange fire before the Most High, that would have been a death sentence.
Right.
Esau would have been out of the story then. There would have been no more Esau at that point.
Mm.
So I think that this specific situation is what preserved Esau's lineage, therefore having the blessing of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, lots and lots of children, lots of generations, all those things were still coming about, and Jacob taking over and doing the correct process with the priestly lineage. So, it's easy to speculate, okay, yeah, it's kind of a dirty deal. Would you do this to your brother? But at the same time, I see this as a way that the father was able to preserve the priesthood and also
Mm-hmm.
preserve Esau's lineage all at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's a blessing both ways. Anyway, I think that's cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the whole thing is, it's Esau's just saying, "Hey, give me something to eat." And Jacob's the one who kind of, at least from the accounts that we have, Jacob's the one who kind of initiates the conversation about birthright. It's like, well, where'd that come from? Like, he could have said, like, lend me your camel, but he's like, no, no, I want the whole, I want all of it, 100% or nothing.
Yeah.
But I mean, so it does seem like he might be taking advantage of a situation, but then at the end you see, you don't see God anywhere that I know of condone or reprimand him for it. And in 7, you see that it says, "And Jacob became the elder," which normally you still say, the second born received the blessing, the second born this. We kind of see that play out a few different times, but it almost is like something seems like tangible happened. He's like, "Oh, now you are the elder." Like, even though Esau's still older, he just doesn't have the birthright. It was like, no, you've almost surpassed. You've gained
Right.
a title that you didn't have prior, even though the birthright is transferable in some sense. Like, even if, let's say they had another older brother and Esau would have died, then it's like you still wouldn't have been the elder, but it seems as though like it was a full transaction, kind of like Kyle was saying, like something that was meant to be.
I wonder if Jacob knew this. I mean, we don't have anything that tells us that he did, but how cool would that be if that was something that was revealed to him? This is how you're going to save your brother.
Mm.
Well, and not only that, but this don't forget now the angel had already had a discussion with the mother ahead of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And said, "Hey, you have two nations fighting in you, blah blah blah," but the younger or the older will serve the younger. So there's already this prophetic word spoken into this situation. And so I think what we're seeing is that actually playing out. And I know sometimes we can look, I mean, in today's world, we can look at that and go, man, that was wrong. You should have just fed your brother. But at the same time, I agree with you, Kyle, that what we're seeing here is the preservation of one is the nation, the 12 tribes. We're seeing a preservation of this. We're seeing that at some point through those 12 tribes that Levi or Levi, however you want to say it, it's going to be born and they're going to take over the mantle of priesthood, for the father. And so there's a lot of things. I guess when we look at that, there's a bigger picture here that of what's happening, that this has to happen. This has to take place. This transfer of power, so to speak, or this transfer of who is now the elder of the two.
Something else I just caught here. Check this out, guys. So let me pull this back up. I'm sorry. In verse 6, it says, "And Jacob gave his brother Esau bread and pottage." He only asked for the pottage, right? But he gave him bread and pottage, and he ate until he was satisfied. So there's something a little more going on here. So number one, bread, real bread, sustains life. Like, you can live on bread and water, right? Like that, you can, proper bread. So this pottage would have been kind of an addition to sustaining life. So he gave his brother Esau bread, which was not even asked for, and pottage. So he gave him something to sustain life and gave him what he asked for over and above what he actually needed to sustain life. So that's pretty interesting. And then the second part is, "And he ate till he was satisfied." In other words, and this was, he was a man of the field. He was a hunter. This was probably a big boy. You know what I mean? He's probably
Yeah,
loading up on some protein and carbs. You know what I'm saying? So he probably ate a lot. So he was
scraping out the bottom of the pot by the time he was finished.
there wasn't a smell left. You know what I mean? So 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 I guess what I'm getting at here is, I don't know. There's just a little more to this, where Esau was asking for this pottage, and he was given something. He was given bread and
All right,
pottage.
I got it, Kyle.
I wonder if there's some kind of a spiritual meaning behind this too. But what you got?
Well, he's making a covenant. He's breaking bread.
Ah,
So we're sealing the deal.
wow.
I mean, the Bible's very clear, not and who did we break bread with. And so in doing this, he's making a covenant. His brother, they're actually making a covenant by breaking this bread. So
Joe gets a gold star on that one.
mhm.
How cool is that? We actually see covenant being made right here, breaking bread. Wow. And right above that, where it says, "Swear to me this day," right?
Yep.
So, I mean,
So you're saying they had to spit in their hand and shake hands?
yeah. Wow. Man, how cool is that, guys? Y'all tell us what y'all think about that down in the comments. That's pretty neat. Okay.
Something else I like to look at, guys, is it's commonly understood that Esau had the red fur. He was very hairy, but that he was red haired. And so when we read down here at the bottom of verse 6, it says, after he sells his birthright, it says, and for this reason was Esau's name called Edom on account of the red pottage which Jacob gave him for his birthright. So the way that this is written, and I guess the way it's kind of saying it here, is possibly that the red, the name given to him, wasn't because he was hairy and red. He was a hairy man, but that it was on account of the red lentil soup. So when we read the side note there, it says Edom equals red, and it says, and Esau was named for the color of the soup, for which he disrespected the value of his birthright. He did have red skin at birth, which is medium brown, but not red hair, just lots of it. So that's something to ponder, something for everyone. Hey, let us know again in the comments what you think about that. If if you have a difference of opinion there, but according to the way this is written, it's like he was hairy, he just wasn't red haired.
Yeah, and it does make sense that that's the case. But anyone who is using this link that we have in the description, who's using this specific resource for their book of Jubilees, just know that the person who put this book together has got their own commentary on the sides. Lots of good information, but there's also some things that we don't necessarily agree with. So just take everything with a grain of salt, kind of thing.
Yeah, for what it's worth.
Right. Study it out.
Search it out.
Yeah. What about this part down here? It says, I know you already addressed a little bit where Jacob became the elder. What do you guys think about this part down here where it says, and Esau was brought down from his dignity? Maybe I ought to do that in a different color. Let's do that. What do y'all think that means?
Yeah, so I just looked up the word dignity, and the definition is the state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect. So it's interesting that it goes that direction of he did something, as that note kind of says off to the right. He disrespected the value of his birthright, and as you kind of look through that process, yes, Jacob did rise, but this was a solo position. So for one to rise, one would have to fall, and it's kind of given us that it's not like, okay, Jacob rose, now they're co-equals, they're co-heirs, they're co-birthwriters, and that's not a word, but it was funny to me. But they weren't both they weren't both equal in status. It's giving us a little bit of an extra detail that we would have to assume otherwise, that Esau was brought down and Jacob was brought up. We just be like, oh well, now Jacob's in charge and Esau's in charge, so maybe one's in charge of war and one's in charge of priesthood. And it's like, no. In order for Jacob to get to that position, Esau had to advocate the role or vacate the role.
Yeah, entirely.
Abdicate was the word I was looking for.
Man.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I see it, guys. You look at the word dignity, it makes me think of the kings and the queens and the princesses and everybody else or those who are of dignity, of prominence. And
dignitaries.
It's almost like, dignitaries is exactly what it's saying. Is like when he sold that birthright, I agree with you, Jonathan, that you're not equals now. You actually are become below your brother. And now fulfilling that prophecy of saying that the older will actually serve the younger.
All right.
So, yeah.
So he was very humbled in this, in every aspect of the word.
Yep.
Yes.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool.
All right, guys, let's pick it back up in verse 8. It says, and the famine was over the land, and Isaac departed to go down into Egypt into the 2nd year of this week, and went to the king of the Philistines, to Gerar, unto Abimelech. And Yahuwah appeared unto him and said unto him, go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land that I shall tell thee of, and sojourn in this land, and I shall be with thee and bless thee. For to thee and to thy seed shall I give all this land, and I shall establish my oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I shall multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and shall give unto thy seed all this land. And in thy seed will all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thy father obeyed my voice, and kept my charge and my commandments, and my laws and my ordinances and my covenant, and now obey my voice and dwell in this land. And he dwelt in Gerar 3 weeks of the years. And Abimelech charged concerning him and concerning all that was his, saying, any man that shall touch him or aught that is his shall surely die. And Isaac waxed strong among the Philistines, and he got many possessions, oxen and sheep and camels and asses and a great household. And he sowed in the land of the Philistines and brought in 100-fold. And Isaac became exceedingly great, and the Philistines envied him.
Yeah, so what's interesting, what we see right there in the top of verse 8 is it's kind of continuing the story. It kind of gives us a little sidebar between Jacob and Esau. It's like not that it's not important, but it's a little side conversation. Like, oh, by the way, this was happening the whole time. Okay, back to it. So there's a famine over the whole land, and Isaac's trying to figure out what's going on. Kids are being crazy, but I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do about this famine. And it says that Yahuwah appeared to him and he was talking to him, said, don't go down into Egypt. We know that's kind of your go-to. It's like, oh, we need some food, go to Egypt. He's like, no, not this time. I'm gonna tell you some other stuff. I'm gonna talk to you a little bit differently. But it's great to see Isaac and the father having this conversation now. We see their relationship being a one-on-one relationship. It's not, oh, your father Abraham, or oh this or oh that. It's like, hey, Isaac, let me talk to you. And then Isaac like, hey, God, thanks for talking to me. So it's really refreshing to kind of see that conversation starting to play out and that relationship start to build and grow. If it wasn't before, it for sure is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and with that, you kind of see in Isaac I feel like he's more stepping up to that role now that he was called to be. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like he seems to be more in tune. And sometimes with let's say with Abraham passing, maybe that helps sometimes when you have this hierarchy, or not hierarchy, I don't know if that's the right word or not, or the what's the word? The patriarch of the family who's still around. And you can't really feel like, well, I can't really walk fully into this because we still have Abraham, our father. But now that Abraham's out, he's passed away. It took about 4 chapters for that to happen, but he passed away. That now we kind of see Isaac. Now God's like, now we're going to laser focus it on you, son. We're going to now, and this is what I need you to do. And I agree with you, Jonathan, on that. It's almost refreshing. It's like he's having this conversation. God's like, hey, by the way, you're being blessed. Everything that I promised Abraham, you're going to get. And by the way, don't go to Egypt. Don't do it. So,
not this time.
Not this time.
I
later, but not right now.
Right. I see a lot in this. So, I mean, obviously, we know that we're going to have some things happen with the Philistines later on, right? I don't know. I guess I see kind of just based off of what was read there, we have this part where God is saying, as he always does, trust me, walk in my ways, I'll bless you. And then what happens? What happens is, what does it say down here at the very end? And it says, and he sowed in the land of the Philistines and brought in 100-fold, and Isaac became exceedingly great, and the Philistines envied him. Right. So he had all these possessions. He waxed strong among the Philistines. So he moves to their quote unquote land. Right. And now this is the land that the father is saying, hey, I'm going to send you here. But he's in this other pagan land, if you will, with all kind of crazy stuff going on. And he has great success there. So it's the same story over and over again. Trust the Father, do what he says do, walk in his ways, he'll bless you. And then those that are around you, if they become your enemies, they'll be conquered. Otherwise, you'll be a great witness to them so that they desire what you have for his kingdom. I think it's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what else we see is this name that we've probably come across a few times, and everybody's probably thinking to himself, where does this name come from? What's the connection? So Abimelech is in this section twice, and that's actually the son of the judge Gideon. So it's always interesting how all of our studies are, coinciding and they cross over each other, but we're kind of putting ourselves in a little bit of a timetable here. We know the story of Gideon with the pots and the torches and the horns and the guys drinking the water different kinds of ways. And this is his son. So we're kind of putting ourselves in the historical time frame of what's going on here. This isn't just an abstract fairy tale, sci-fi, science fiction. This is real life, real people, real things going on. And God's moving now apparently in two different ways. Abimelech and whatever is going on over there, he's still kind of coming in after Gideon when the people fall back to their wayward ways. And then you see this lineage over here kind of taking care of business. And you're like, well, God's moving in both stories in both different ways, but telling them the exact same message.
Right.
Tear down your Asherah pole and your altars to Baal and follow me. And then we see that in verse 11, where it goes through all the charges. And it's the same thing that's been since day one of the Bible, literally day one of creation. But it's interesting because we always just say, "I'll keep the law," and we just use that as a blanket statement. But here he's really defining these terms. There's more than just the word law or Torah. Not that those are bad, but he's like, there's more to the story. He's like, I'm talking about commandments and laws and ordinances and covenants. And even then, obey my voice. If I tell you something that's outside of these things, if my voice is the one that's telling you to do it, that's good too. That treat that like gospel. And I think that's one of the things that I've picked up on over time is we can't be so dogmatic in the words in the book. While they are infinitely important and we're meant to adhere to them and follow them, but if the Father goes and says, do A, B, and C, if we get a message from a messenger that says A, B, and C, that is as if the Father is speaking it to you directly, as if it's written in the book itself. So I think that was interesting that it was added in there, because that's an aspect of the Father I don't think we always pay attention to. Is sometimes he's talking to us, that's equivalent to Bible, that's equivalent to the words written on the paper. And that's why we're supposed to test the spirits, just to make sure it was him and it's not some nonsense.
That's right.
And doubling down on what I was saying earlier, and sheep leaping off of what you just said there, let's go right back over here to verse 11. And this is so cool to me, guys. So in our modern doctrines and theologies that you see put out there through most of Christendom today, it's all about me, right? It's all about what God's my magic genie, right? Hey, I'm going to pray for this thing and he's going to give me this thing, right? It's the name it and claim it and blab it and grab it and all that kind of stuff, right? But here's something that I think is just absolutely amazing and beautiful about the Most High's promises. So let's jump down a little bit to read what we just read. But it says, because thy father obeyed my voice and kept my charge and my commandments and my laws and my ordinance and my covenants, and now you obey my voice and dwell in this land. Right? But let's back up just a little bit, because this is the really important caveat here. And in thy seed will all the nations of the earth be blessed, because of those things, because of what Dad did and because of what you're going to do. The seed will, thy seed will, and in thy seed will all the nations of the earth be blessed. It ain't about me.
Right.
It's about glorifying the Most High, that all the nations will be blessed because of my obedience. Man, that's so cool. That's so cool that he promises that. So it's not about me.
You know who else agrees with that? Kyle?
All of Scripture?
Mr. Dr. Phil?
All of Scripture and Dr. Phil. It's not all about you.
Too funny.
So yeah, we see that cause and effect there, Kyle. So it's like when you do, then you receive. When you act, then the Father responds. So that's a beautiful story and a great promise that we have in Him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, another thing I want to point out too, the difference in this story, and when we go to Genesis chapter 26. So Abimelech is a sovereign; he's the king of the Philistines. But in this part in 13, Kyle, if you'll bring that up right there. So, hey guys, I like to. There's a difference in the story here between this account and the one that we find in Genesis 26. If you look at the side note there, it says, "Notice that no reference is made in our text to Isaac's deception about Rebekah." What deception is he talking about here? Anybody?
You talking about this is my sister?
Yeah. Exactly. So if we go to the Genesis account, and I believe it's down in verse 7 of 26, it says, "And when the men of the place asked about his wife, he said, 'She is my sister,' for he was afraid to say, 'She is my wife,' thinking lest the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she is good looking." So, but here in the Jubilees account, we don't really get that. What we're getting is we just had the father explain, like we just talked about, explain to Isaac, "Man, I'm going to bless you. And because of what your father did, and you obey my voice, man, this land, it's all yours, and your seed and everything going forth and all this good stuff." And so when we get to and I'm not trying to compare the two accounts saying Genesis is wrong and Jubilees is right or anything like that. But it's interesting here that it's almost like when he shows up, because now he's got the backing of the Heavenly Father with him. And Abimelech must sense something about this. I mean, this family from the time of Abraham is not like they're not known. They're very well known, probably all over the place, especially after Abraham goes in there and defeats, what was it, like 5 or 7 kingdoms with 318 guys. I mean, he's well known. This family isn't like, oh, who are you talking about? Abraham? Who's that? No, we know exactly who this is. So when he shows up, and it says in 13, Abimelech goes, he said, charge concerning him. I'll let you bring it up there, brother. It says, "And Abimelech charged concerning him and concerning all that was his," including his wife and everything that goes along with that. It says, "all that is his, saying, any man that shall touch him or aught that is his shall surely die." I mean, so the sovereign here, he ain't playing. He's like, "Hey, I recognize who you are. I recognize what's going on. And so no one is to touch this man or anything that belongs to him."
Right.
So anyway, I love the way, I'll be honest with you, when we're reading through here sometimes, and the way that the author of this book wrote this. It says, "And Isaac waxed strong amongst the Philistines." We don't use that word today. Joe and Jonathan were at the gym, and they waxed strong that day in the gym. They just, they beat all their PRs a day. They just waxed strong. So I just love the way the old language was, and the wording in there. I just think it's really cool, though.
You know what? Let me ask this. I'd like to hear both of y'all's take, but especially coming from a standpoint of pastoralness, whatever you want to call that.
Hey, John, we're all making up words today, so we're good.
Right. I'd like to get y'all's take on this, because there is, when it comes to finances, so definitely want to hear your opinion too, there, Jonathan. When it comes to finances and possessions and things like this, it's man, it's one of those subjects that's just it really plagues believers, right? They don't know which way to go. So on one extreme, you got the name it, claim it, blab it, and grab it, right? God wants me to have a Lamborghini, and the other hand is, I shouldn't have anything to do with money. I should be poor and whatever. And they have this misunderstanding of humble and meekness and things like that, right? So anyway, we see with the patriarchs, we see with all these people how blessed they truly are, and we see over and over again. Right here in 14, it says, "And he got many possessions and oxen and sheep and camels and asses and a great household." So this guy was financially blessed big time, right? So I'd just like to get y'all's take on the financial aspect of this. Is this just because they were chosen people to be rich, or what? What do y'all think about that?
Well, I'll jump in initially here and say that You know, the Father always plans, it seems, to bless people and to put you in a position where you can bless others. And he wants to use us in that process. Could he go and deposit individually into everybody's bank account? Yeah, I don't see why he couldn't do that. But at the same time, then he misses that relationship aspect of where we're supposed to serve other people. We're supposed to love other people how he loves us. So it's those outward expressions of love for one another that we actually are walking more and more like his son, Yeshua. And along the way, when he gives us things like gifts and talents, or even, monetary possessions, he wants to know what we're going to do with it, and where's our heart. And you can see Abraham and Isaac, these guys were shown in their testing that, hey, we will give you these people if you give us the money. He's like, no, 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 I want the people. My heart's for the souls. Money, I have plenty. God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. We can figure that part out. But give me the people, because that's how I'm going to make actual impact on the kingdom. And then so when we see Yeshua show up, he's speaking nothing about kingdom and where our treasures are meant to be stored, where our investments are supposed to be um, directed towards. So anything that we're doing that's kingdom minded, that's um, achieving the goal of moving the souls from one camp to the other camp, and hopefully that's the camp that gets to live in the New Jerusalem or outside, or however that works out for them, but not being owned by the adversary. And so much of these blessings, he's like, I want to give you as much as possible, but yet it depends on what you do with it. So we see those examples all throughout the parables, where it's like the guy was given one talent, he buried it, the other guy doubled it, and the other guy tenfolded. And the guy who made it tenfold, well, he got the biggest thumbs up. So, the Bible's not ever telling us to just go be poor and destitute. I mean, now I'm sure that there's times and places where God uses people like that and scenarios like that, but I don't see a command or a directive. Even in the example in Acts, it was for a purpose and for a reason and for a time. So if everybody's poor and destitute, then how are we then serving the widows, the poor, and the orphans? If we're all just barely scraping by, we don't even have enough to take care of ourselves, much less than turn around and take care of another. So it's a difficult conversation at times, but I think it's one that, if we know how to use the resources we're giving appropriately, and if we continue to have a heart like the Father, then I don't see there being any end to the blessings that he can bestow on us. It's our own sin and our own desire for the worldly things that, probably keep us further from that heart that we need to have. So then he's like, well, I can't give you so much because I kind of know you're going to put it in your 401k. I kind of know you're going to buy that Lamborghini. I kind of know that you're going to splurge a little bit. And really, if you just went and took care of this need in your community, that would be what I wanted. And I'd give you more of that.
Awesome. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at this time frame they're living in, this isn't just about an individual. It's like when we think of our households, it's us and our family, right? So when we're looking at Isaac here, he's probably inherited everyone who was with Abraham. They're probably all one big community. So this isn't even about, look at what all I got. He's kicking back in, in a 20,000 square foot mansion. He's actually providing for everyone.
Right.
So all this is blessing from his immediate family to everyone. That's a part of of his group. And so with this, we see that that's the way it should be. This is about blessing everyone that's around me. On the other hand, too, I think what this does, as far as, and again, this time frame, is that when he shows up and you've got this entourage and you've already, let's put it this way, Abimelech didn't make him rich. He didn't make him more wealthy in the eyes. He already showed up with a lot to begin with. He just got more. Like in here, it says he got 100. It says in 100-fold more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so what's happening is all these Philistines are looking at us going, they're jealous and they're envy, but that's a good thing because we have someone who's serving the Most High. And the Most High is going to say, hey, when you show up and people ask, whoa, why are you blessed? Well, that's because of this, because of him, right? Because of Abraham, who kept all the commandments and all these things. Our God blessed us abundantly and above. What has your God done for you lately? Because let's face it, the Philistines were not a holy people. They were serving their own gods like a lot of the other nations were at the time. So I believe that this is also a statement on behalf and a witness on behalf of our Heavenly Father when they show up and it's like, why do you have these things? And we've talked about this in Bible studies and our Torah studies, that the original group that came out of Egypt was supposed to be what? A light to the nations. There was supposed to be something about you that when the nations look back, they want to know, why is your crops growing better than everybody else's? Why are you always have water? Why? And then all of them at that point could use all three of the names and go, because we serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? Well, it goes all the way back to great-great-great-grandpa Abraham and the covenant that the Father made with him, that he kept all of these things. And what things did he keep? I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you what they are. Oh, so you mean to tell me if I do the things and I serve your God and I follow this, that I get blessed? Absolutely. So then the nations are witness to on behalf of what our Heavenly Father is and that relationship. And so these things is more about the Lamborghinis. It's more about it's more than just the bigger houses and everything else. This is so that when someone says, why are you so blessed? Oh, I'm blessed because of him. Not because I played the stock market and I was really wise and really smart and it's all about me. No, my Heavenly Father said, if I do these things, yes, he will bless you abundantly. If you are faithful in the little, guess what? He says, I can trust you now with much. But if you're not faithful in the little things, then he's not going to trust you with the more. And so anyway, that's kind of, I know we can go a lot deeper in this, but that's just my immediate take on this situation with Isaac and the world we live in today.
No, I think y'all nailed it, to be honest with you. And I think this specific part of scripture that we're reading here, I think it lays it out so plainly that we just miss it sometimes. And that is very simply, I'm going to go back to that same verse we were looking at before. Verse 11, because thy father obeyed my voice and kept my charge and my commandments and my laws and my ordinance and my covenant, and now you obey my voice.
Yep.
And what happens? And in thy seed will all the nations of the earth be blessed because of that thing. So yes, it's easy for us to. It's not easy for us. It's a lot of times people will simply say, why am I blessed? Oh, because of the Most High. But no, he tells us in his word here. He tells us in scripture, it's because the Most High blesses me, because that's the promise that he gave. If I keep if I obey his voice, keep his charge, keep his commandments, keep his laws, keep his ordinances and his covenant, that's the answer. If we simply just do that, we honor him, we worship him the way that he says to do so, blessings are part of it. Now, are there specific situations where you may be called to do something else? You may be called to live under a bridge, right? There may be situations like that, but you're still going to be blessed, and it's still going to bring glory to the kingdom because you're obeying his voice, you're obeying his ordinances, his covenant with you. So anyway, I just think that's beautiful, guys, and we will have to continue the next part in part 2 of chapter 24, Book of Jubilees, next time. God bless.
Shalom.
Wow.